The anger that shows up in midlife, the kind that lands on your partner for the way he said something, or didn't say something, or loaded the dishwasher wrong for the 10,000th time, is not about the dishwasher. And it's probably not really about him either. But here's what's more counterintuitive than that. It's not misdirected. It is pointing at something completely real. The problem is that what it's pointing at is so large and so old, and has so many of your own fingerprints on it, that it's almost impossible to see from inside your own life. Today, that target gets a shape. Not so you can stop being angry, so you can finally understand what the anger has been trying to tell you, and why no amount of relationship repair has managed to touch it. Here's what happens with anger that has no clear address. It doesn't disappear. It doesn't wait politely until a more convenient or more legitimate target appears. It moves toward whatever surface is available. And in the life of a woman in her 40s or early 50s, a woman who has spent decades being competent and contained and endlessly oriented around other people's needs, the most available surface is almost always the person she shares a bedroom with. Not because he is the worst person in her life, sometimes because he is the closest, sometimes because he is the safest, and sometimes because he does, genuinely, do things that are worth being angry about. All of that can be true at once. But here's what keeps happening. She gets angry, the argument happens, something gets resolved or something gets apologized for, and the anger comes back. Maybe not that day, maybe not that week, but it comes back. And when it does, it's just as large as before, sometimes larger, because she has been trying to drain a lake through a crack in the floor. The lake keeps refilling, and no one has looked at what's feeding it. The question worth asking isn't, why do I keep getting this angry at him? The question is, what is actually filling this lake? There's a pattern that appears consistently in research on women in midlife and identity, not in the clinical language of disorder, but in the quieter data of accumulated experience. Women who report the highest levels of diffuse, targetless anger in their 40s and early 50s are not, by and large, women in objectively bad marriages. They are women who have spent the longest time organizing their lives almost entirely around other people's needs, and who have the least language for what that cost. The anger is not a malfunction. It is a measurement. Think about what has actually been accumulating over the last 10, 15, 20 years. The version of yourself who had a particular kind of ambition softened because it was easier, because the timing wasn't right, because someone else's career needed the room. The creative hunger that got moved to weekends then moved off weekends entirely. The opinion you stopped offering because the energy required to defend it was never worth what you got back. The desire you learned not to name because naming it would mean wanting something that wasn't on the list. None of those were dramatic sacrifices. That's precisely what makes them invisible. Each one was reasonable. Each one made sense at the time. Each one was chosen, technically, freely. And grief, real grief, doesn't care whether the loss was reasonable. Grief doesn't ask, was this justified? It asks, what is gone? This is why the couples therapy didn't touch it. This is why the good week, followed by another bad week. This is why the apology lands and the anger returns anyway, because what she's actually grieving has no name on the argument. The argument is just where the grief found a door. The real target isn't him. The real target is the size of what was set down, and the fact that no one ever acknowledged it as a loss. Here is the reframe that changes everything. The anger is not a symptom. It is not a hormonal side effect to be managed. It is not evidence that something is wrong with her, or wrong with her marriage, or wrong with her character. The anger is information. Specifically, it is the most honest intelligence her system has produced in years. It has been keeping a tally, a quiet, patient, decade-long tally of everything that was asked of her and given, everything she was rewarded for not wanting, everything she put on hold until later and later never arrived. The anger knows the number. She hasn't always been allowed to know it. But the anger has known it the entire time. This is what makes midlife anger so disorienting. It doesn't feel proportional to the argument. Because it isn't about the argument. It's proportional to 20 years. And 20 years of quietly making yourself smaller. 20 years of being the person who handles it. 20 years of putting the question, what do I actually want? Somewhere safe where it couldn't cause any trouble. That is an enormous amount of unlived life looking for a place to go. The anger has always known something you weren't allowed to say out loud. It knew that what you were being asked to carry wasn't evenly distributed. It knew that the version of yourself you kept postponing was not going to wait indefinitely. It knew that grateful for what I have and grieving what I gave up are not contradictions, that both can be completely true at the same time. It's not a symptom. It's information. And information, unlike shame, can be worked with. If this is landing, if you've been carrying this anger and you want more than a name for it, there is a resource in the description called the Anger Decoder. It's a short course. 4 modules, built specifically for this. Decoding what your anger is actually pointing at, identifying its real targets, and learning to work with it instead of managing it. The link is in the description and the pinned comment. Now, the objection that's been sitting in the back of the room since the beginning of this video. But some of it really is about him. Yes, probably. He may genuinely dismiss her. He may take up more space than he's aware of. He may not be carrying his weight in ways that are real and measurable and have nothing to do with accumulated self-erasure. All of that can be true. And it exists inside a larger container. The distinction that matters is this. There is the anger that belongs to the relationship. Specific, addressable, the kind that couples therapy can reach. And there is the anger that belongs to the unlived life, the part that no amount of relationship repair will touch, because it isn't about him, it's about her. About the version of herself that has been waiting for the conversation. No one in her life knows how to start. Knowing which changes everything, not because it makes the relationship anger less valid, but because when she can separate the two, she stops needing him to fix what he didn't cause. She stops measuring the marriage against a deficit that the marriage was never designed to fill. So what does she do with the anger that belongs to the unlived life? She doesn't perform it. She doesn't suppress it. She doesn't need to announce it at the dinner table or build a case for it in therapy or explain it to anyone who hasn't spent an hour understanding what's actually underneath it. What she does first is this. She lets it be information rather than indictment. She asks, what is this pointing at? What specifically has been set down that this anger is still counting? What did I want before I learned not to want it? What would I choose if choosing for myself felt as natural as choosing for everyone else? Those questions are not comfortable, but they are the right questions. And asking them, actually letting them run instead of closing them before they finish, is the first concrete thing she can do with an anger she finally understands. The anger that had no address now has somewhere to go, not toward him, not inward as shame, toward the question she almost never lets herself finish. If you want a structured way to take this further, to actually decode what your specific anger is pointing at, the Anger Decoder in the description is exactly that. 4 modules, built for this. Link in the description and the pinned comment. When did you first notice that the anger wasn't really about what it appeared to be about? And what do you think it was actually counting? Here's what to carry out of today. Not a resolution. Not a plan. Just this. The anger that has been landing on the nearest target is not evidence that you're a difficult person. It's not evidence that your marriage is failing. It's not a hormonal malfunction or a character flaw or proof that you don't appreciate what you have. It is the most loyal part of you doing the one thing it knows how to do. Refusing to stop counting what has been lost. The anger has been keeping the record for every year you were told the record didn't need to be kept. For every version of yourself you set down because the timing was wrong. For every desire you moved to the category of later until later stopped being a real destination. It knew. It kept counting. And it has been trying to get your attention with whatever is available, which, for most women in this situation, is the person who left his socks on the floor. That's not his fault. And it's not yours. This doesn't get fully untangled tonight. The unlived life isn't a problem that one video solves, but here's what tonight gives you. One precise thing to hold when the spiral starts again. The anger has a target. It's just that the target is so large and so old and so woven into everything you love that pointing at it has always felt like pointing at the sky. Tonight, it has a little more shape, and that the moment when a feeling that felt like chaos begins to have an outline, that is not a small thing. That is where it starts. Not a rupture, a return to the woman who has been keeping the record all along and who deserves, finally, to be heard.